Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto had been raised by Kakashi his entire life, and how would raising Naruto change Kakashi's life as well. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 30, Day Off. It was a normal morning for Konoha, and in Naruto's room he was slowly waking up. He groaned as he felt himself waking up. He pried it open an eye and looked at the clock on by his bed. It was 9 in the morning, and he was surprised at how long he had slept in. He remembered that he was going to see Hinata today. As he got up and started to stretch out, he remembered her at the monument and him taking her home again. He was a bit embarrassed carrying the Hyuga heiress on his back, but he was glad to do it. Thankfully she woke up before he reached the main gates, and they made plans to meet up today, since she seemed to have gotten the day off as well. He felt a bit better than he had the past few days. He was still slightly scared of what could happen if he called on that fox's chakra again, but he would deal with that later. He did his usual morning rituals before getting dressed. He checked the time and he didn't feel like making breakfast, so he'd stop by the ramen stand before going to Hinata's. "Yo, Naruto, how are you feeling?" Naruto looked to see his dad on the couch reading one of his books again. "Hey Dad, feeling a bit better to be honest." Kakashi nodded, glad to hear it. "So what's up for today?" "I'm going to see Hinata-chan today, and we're going to hang out. We haven't been able to do like we used to when we were in the academy," Naruto told him. "Alright, oh by the way, I'll be cashing in the payments for the missions and handing them out to the team. I'll place it on your dresser when I get it. You should also know that the mission was bumped up to AB ranked because of the ninjas we faced," Kakashi told his son. Naruto nodded his head, and they said their goodbyes as he left to get to Hinata's home. It was kind of cool that the mission was now officially AB rank. Normally he'd be excited about that, but he didn't feel too excited about that mission. He was still thinking about what happened, and what he was really worried about was the damn fox inside of him. If this is what happened every time he got really angry, then it would mean he would have to control his anger. Which he admits is hard for him since he lashes out far too often, but he couldn't help it, that was just the way he was. At any rate, he just wanted to put his problems behind him for the moment, and just enjoy the day with Hinata. He quickly stopped off at the ramen stand for a few bowls, and had a nice chat with Ayame and her father there. It was one of the reasons he loved that stand. It had both great food with great people to talk to while there. After that he made his way to the Hyuga clan compound. Naruto went in through the front without a problem, as he was well known among the Hyuga clan, and went in search of Hinata. He was wondering if he would be able to see Neji there if he wasn't with his team today. He wanted to ask him if Lee was up for a rematch at some point. He didn't see him as he walked through the grounds, so he guessed he could always have Hinata tell him later. He found her in the garden area with Hanabi as they were sitting and talking. He yelled out to them, and Hanabi smiled at seeing him. Hinata blushed as usual, giving him a weak wave as he walked over to them. "So how are my favorite Hyuga girls?" Naruto asked happily. "We're the only Hyuga girls you know personally, Naruto Nizan," Hanabi stated. "Oh, why did you have to be so cold, Hanabi-chan?" Naruto said in an exaggerated display of being hurt. Hinata giggled at these theatrics, hiding her smile behind her hands. "See, Hinata can at least knows when to have fun," he said. "I know how to have fun," Hanabi said, crossing her arms and giving him a hard look. "Besides, when my sister told me you two had a free day, I was hoping you'd want to join me and Konohamaru today." Naruto thought about it. He hadn't seen the old man's grandson since he left on his mission. The boy was kind of like a little brother to him, and he wouldn't mind seeing him again. He then got a sly smile on his face as an idea popped into his head. "Oh, so we're off to see Konohamaru then? Didn't know you liked boys yet, man. You're after a boyfriend already. You really work fast, Hanabi-chan." Hanabi looked both mortified and embarrassed. I am only 8 years old. I don't like boys like that. He's just my only friend outside of the clan." Naruto burst out laughing at the look on her face. It had been priceless. "And Naruto-kun, that was mean to Hanabi-chan." Hinata scolded him for being mean to her little sister. Okay, I'm sorry. Hanabi gave him a small glare telling him that she would get even with him at some point, but that would have to be later. One of the reasons she wanted them to come was so that her and Konohamaru could work on Hinata and Naruto while they were all together. After that, the small group decided they would go and meet Konohamaru at the park since he would be getting there pretty soon. It took them a while to get to the park, but when they got there they found Konohamaru waiting there for them. He was happy to see Naruto and the Hyuga sisters as well. Hanabi and Konohamaru started to play on the equipment a bit while Naruto and Hinata had a nice talk. Mainly just to catch up with what they had been doing since the last time they really got to see another. He was glad to hear that Hinata was doing fine with her team, and she really liked her sensei. Naruto had met Kurenai a few times thanks to his dad, and the fact she was Anko's best friend too. Oh yeah, she always seemed really nice. Naruto nodded his head. Hinata smiled and nodded too. Why yes, she's been great. She's so kind, gentle, but also gets as serious when she has to be. Sometimes what? She kind of reminds me, of my mom, Hinata said. Hinata fell silent at that, remembering the death of her mother always hurt. She felt a hand on her shoulder and looked to see Naruto there. He had his hand on her shoulder, giving it a little squeeze and a comforting look to tell her she wasn't alone. She was glad for it and gave him a small smile to let him know that she was okay. Hey, aren't you two going to play too or make eyes at each other all day? Konohamaru yelled out, making both young teens blush and pull apart. It's nothing like that, we were just talking. Naruto shouted out, glad the mask hid a blush. We shouldn't ignore them, and Naruto-kun, why don't we join them? Hinata said, trying to get their minds off that. Yeah, you're right, that's why we came here, right? He asked, smiling at her with his eyes closed like normal. They started to play together. Normally they either played all together or they would be split into two teams. Usually, they were the girls against the boys or two older kids against the two youngest. But Naruto didn't care at all. For the moment he was just a young teen enjoying his life with his friends, and that's all that mattered to him. After that mission, this was the best kind of thing he could do, something that reminded him that there was still plenty of good things in the world. They played several games together, laughing and enjoying things. The group also showed Konohamaru a few games as well. One of them was Captured Princess. Mainly one person acted as the princess that you had to save. For this game Hinata got that, while Hanabi and Konohamaru had to tag Naruto in order to defeat him. The two kids tried their best, but Naruto was great at moving to avoid people when he had to. So, he managed to avoid the two kids as best he could and quickly made over to where Hinata was by a tree. Got ya, Naruto said as he took Hinata by the hand, as that signaled that she was now safe. He had to admit it felt kind of good to play this old game again. It reminded him of when they were younger and things had been simpler. Konohamaru walked up as he was grinning under his scarf covering his lower face. He had an idea and he hoped that Hanabi would catch on to what he had planned to help get Naruto and Hinata together. Hey, isn't the hero supposed to get a kiss from the girl when he saves her? Both young teens blushed at this, Hinata more so of course. Ha! I can't do that. Naruto blurted out. Hinata's face looked to the ground, feeling depressed that he quickly said such a thing with her right there. Hanabi did in fact catch on and schooled her face to not let it show. What, are you saying my sister isn't pretty enough to kiss? No. I mean, she is one of the prettiest girls from the academy, Naruto said, suddenly realizing that Hinata might have taken it as an insult. He only meant it, as she was his best friend, and he thought that she would be too weirded out by that. He had seen her face fall and remembered the few tips his dad gave him about girls and their moods. Girls like to be complimented, and he had done the exact opposite. Hinata's head shot up in surprise that he called her pretty. She hadn't thought that he would say such a thing about her, as she thought she was just kind of plain. Naruto thinks I'm pretty? But why would he think that? Ino has better hair and Sakura is so sure of herself. But he thinks I'm one of the prettiest girls from school? Her face grew warm at the thought of Naruto looking at her as a beautiful girl. Konohamaru meanwhile was glad that Hanabi was catching on fast, and now it was time to really put Naruto on the spot. Well, if you think she's pretty then give her a kiss then, unless that rumor about you and the Uchiha guy was true, he said offhanded. He grinned seeing Naruto's expression. He had learned about that kiss incident from Hanabi one day, and he laughed his ass off at it. Apparently Hinata had come home looking all depressed, and since Hanabi and her were close she had told her little sister what happened. Naruto was both embarrassed and pissed. Would that damn thing haunt him for the rest of his life? It had been an accident and now Konohamaru was calling him out on his sexuality? He wouldn't stand for that. He liked girls. Hell, he read his dad's books when he could, and he noticed girls all the time. It's not true Naruto and I-san? Hanabi said innocently, further making Naruto angry. If it is, then I think I know of a third removed cousin, and I think he would think you are pretty cute if you like boys that much. I'm not gay. I like girls. Naruto shouted out, not caring how that sounded to anyone listening. Prove it then, both young kids said to him. Fine, I will. And without even thinking he turned and gave Hinata a kiss on the cheek. Sure, his mask was one, and it was more of a chase kiss, but the effect on Hinata was immediate. She turned whole new shades of red as her eyes widened to the size of saucers. She was frozen stiff as her mind was trying to process what just happened, but only one thought was repeating in her brain. Naruto kissed me, Naruto kissed me, Naruto kissed me. Naruto kissed me. Hinata's mind was screaming out in joy. Sure, it wasn't some deeply romantic moonlight kiss on the lips like she had dreamed of many times. But still his lips had touched her face, and it was the best she ever thought that she could have hoped for in real life. No, not again, Naruto said, seeing Hinata get all red in the face. She looked really dazed and she was starting to rock back and forth until she fell. Thankfully he was there to catch her, but he really wished he knew why she kept fainting. Every time he asked, she just stuttered so much he couldn't understand. He was thinking of taking her to the hospital to see if they could find out what was wrong with her, but every time he brought it up she kept telling him it was nothing to worry about. So, he just signed and gently placed her on the ground, wondering why she had such a huge smile on her face. Konohamaru and Hanabi gave each other amused looks. Well, so far that was a good first step, but is she going to be okay? He whispered to her. Hanabi nodded. Yeah, this is normal for her. Now we just have to get them to spend more time with each other, but she needs to be more confident if she's ever going to tell him how she feels. Yeah, and he doesn't know that she likes him. Why doesn't anyone just tell him? He asked. She shrugged, saying that Hinata had asked many people not to tell him because she was too embarrassed and wanted to do it herself. Although, like she had already said, she was too shy to do so. Konohamaru made a sour face. Are all relationships like this? Hanabi shrugged, not sure herself. She hoped not. If she ever liked a boy, she planned to just tell him to his face and deal with the after effects. Maybe we can work on them separately. I could try and get him to notice her if you think you can get her to actually say what she feels, he suggested. Good plan. She nodded her head as she looked at her sister. At this rate she was going to have to start carrying smelling salts on her from now on. Uchiha compound. Sasuke was in the training yard of his compound that he used since he was a kid. He could have moved out of the house at any time. After all, it was filled with the ghosts of the past. But he needed to be reminded of what his brother had done to his clan, to their family. After the compound had been cleaned up by order of the Hokage, Sasuke had taken up residence in his old room again. It was hard to sleep that whole first month. He kept expecting his brother to come back and finish the job, but he never did come back. Eventually he got used to the quiet of the place, and it became a refuge for him. He was sick and tired of all the praises he got in the academy, or all those stupid fangirls that just wanted him because of his statues as the last of a noble clan. They had this noble idea of him as some wounded soul that needed to be healed or something foolish like that. Of course, he was in pain, but he needed that pain to help him push himself. He could care less about what people thought of him. It was mostly just empty praise anyway. He didn't see why just because he was the last of his his clan that he should get so much attention, when he just wanted to be left alone. So, he came home most of the time to just get away from it all. No one really cared anyway, most just wanted to be close to the Uchiha like they actually wanted to know him. That was a truth he learned at a very young age, that no one really wanted to know the real him. So, he pushed all that fake admiration, attention, and all that other stuff away. He didn't need illusions like that in his life, so he was spending his day training. He was by the lake trying out the new fire techniques that Kakashi gave him. Although he had a natural affinity with fire, it was still taking time to learn them. He wanted to totally focus on this because he knew that Naruto wouldn't be too far behind. He actually had to smirk at that thought he had been the only one that managed to push him further along in life. Sure, he thought of Naruto as a loudmouth fool that sometimes didn't take things as seriously, but at times he had his moments. He was still surprised at how Naruto had dealt with that ninja on the mission. He never pictured the blonde would be able to do something like that. Plus, there was that huge chakra signature as well. There were so many mysteries surrounding the Hatake family. Why they wore the masks, the strange way Naruto seemed to have such a huge chakra supply, and the way he healed. Sakura hadn't noticed, but he had noticed on the way back that Naruto seemed to heal from his injuries pretty quick. There was also Kakashi's eye. He was finally able to get their sensei to explain why he had a Sharingan eye. Only the man simply said that his teammate who was dying gave it to him because he had lost one of his. To Sasuke it seemed inconceivable that an Uchiha would give up even one eye to a non-clan member. It was pretty much unheard of when he looked up information in his family history. He had seen a name crossed out that existed several decades ago in all the history. It seemed that whoever that Uchiha was, his clan had wiped out his history as though the man never existed. It seemed a harsh thing to do, even if it went against the clan's rules to wipe out someone's existence like that was a cruel fate. At any rate, Sasuke went back to his practicing trying to get the new move down. He made the hand seals and focused on the chakra in his lungs and shouted out, "Fire style, dragon missile." With that, a flaming dragon came out of his mouth and flew over the lake. It made it about 15 feet before it lost too much chakra and faded away. He stood there panting for breath, feeling his mouth dry from the effort. Not bad, a little more practice and you'll start to get the hang of it. Sasuke quickly turned around to see Kakashi there standing behind him. His body was in a lazy position, although his face looked interested in him. Although you really should have a bottle or water or something when training with that kind of fire jutsu to prevent dehydration, also be careful of your chakra level. If you use too much you'll just collapse right there, and it could take a very long time for someone to find you here. He said, digging out a small purse. He handed it to him, and told him about the change in mission and pay. He had already stopped by the Hirono house and given it to Sakura's parents. They were nice enough people, and it seemed his other genin was out with Ino. He was glad that Asuma gave the young girl time off to help out Sakura. Sasuke placed the small pouch on the ground and nodded as he went back to the end of the dock. Kakashi knew that the boy wouldn't open up unless you forced the issue. He was never good at subtly with this kind of thing anyway. "Sasuke, I wanted to know how you're dealing with the last mission. The first kill isn't always something a person can handle well at first." "I'm fine. That's what has me worried," Kakashi said seriously. "You act like it doesn't affect you at all, and that's very worrying." "She was an enemy and was trying to kill me," he said simply. "I only did what I did to survive." Kakashi sighed. "That's true, but I think you're on a fine line here. Enjoying killing makes you into someone that attacks anyone just for the thrill of it. Those types of enemies are like rabid dogs who are a danger to everyone. But with being so emotionless about it, you can actually be even more dangerous. Those types are cold and methodical, they rarely make mistakes, and are very patient." "How is that more dangerous?" Kakashi decided to hit home with the boy. He knew it was low, but he needed a wake-up call, because that's how Itachi is. Sasuke turned around furious at him for bringing up his brother, and what was worse, he insinuating that he was anything like his brother was taking things too far. "I'm nothing like him. Both child prodigies, both want to become stronger, and you both don't seem to care much about killing." You're starting to sound a lot like him, but don't get angry at me if you can't help but face the truth. I know you want to kill him, and I can't blame you. I know what it's like to have those close to you taken from you. I've lost nearly everyone that I care for with the exception of a handful of people. Kakashi looked over the water as Sasuke mulled over his words. Sasuke, you're on a dangerous path, you have such great potential, but I'm worried where your drive will take you. You could very well end up becoming what you hate, and even if you do kill him, then what? If all you have in your life is hate, then you'll be left with nothing when it's over. Your entire life's work will have ended before you actually started to live your life. Sasuke looked away as he looked over the water as well. He vowed to kill Itachi for what he did, nothing could stop that. But why was this man trying so hard to make sure he didn't end up like him? Why would he care what happens to him? Why do you care? Sasuke said bluntly. Kakashi shrugged. Maybe it's because you remind me of how I used to be at your age, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes I made. Sasuke was now surprised. The fact that Kakashi claimed to be anything like him at his age was laughable. Hey, it's true. I used to be a strictly by-the-book ninja, never late and always serious. I was called a genius too, but I never cared about that, only my skills. He said, smiling at the boy. But then one day I lost someone who I found that I viewed as not only my best friend, but as a brother I never had. When I lost him, everything started to change. Sasuke thought about who it was. It was the Uchiha that gave you the eye, wasn't it? Kakashi nodded his head. I can't find any record of his name in my family records. It was like they wanted to erase his memory. He then noticed a slightly angry look in the man's eye. He had never really seen the man angry, but his whole body subtly changed, and for a second, he felt all the stories he looked into about him were all very true. He deserves to be remembered, Kakashi said in a tone that you could hear a suppressed fury in them. His name was Obito Uchiha, and although he wasn't the normal type of Uchiha, he was someone special, someone that comes around only once in a generation, I feel. People like him are very rare, but I'm glad that I met him. How did it happen? Sasuke asked, wanting to know more about this mysterious Uchiha. Kakashi sighed as he looked slightly depressed as he started to recall old memories. It was on a mission. Our teammate Rin was captured, and I wanted to go on and finish the mission without her. He told me he was going back. He was the one that came up with the phrase, a ninja who doesn't follow the rules is trash, but a ninja that turns his backs on his friends is worse than trash. I still went on, but I later turned around feeling his words echo in my mind. When I caught up, there were a lot of things going on. I won't go into detail. There was a battle, we got Rin, I lost my eye, and then that fool had to go and be noble and sacrifice himself so we could live. Half his body was crushed, and I was there when he died. With his dying breath he asked Rin to put his eye in me. Kakashi was silent for a long time, remembering his old team. I lost him. Then a few months later I lost Rin when she was on a mission, and she never came back. Then I lost my sensei, who was like a second father to me. For a moment I had lost everyone in my life and I had no one left, but then one bright moment came, and that was Naruto. For the longest time he's kept me strong, and that's where true strength comes from, Sasuke. It comes from the bonds you form. You're stronger because you fight for someone else, and not just for yourself. Like how you want to avenge your clan, but are you doing it for them, or for yourself? You'll be stronger if you fight in their memory and not for your revenge. Kakashi and Sasuke stood there alone silently as they watched the sun started to lower itself. He felt that he had said enough, and went to turn to get back home to Naruto. Kakashi-sensei, Sasuke said to him, not looking away from the lake. Can you tell me more about this Obito sometime? Why is that? Kakashi asked. Because he was of my clan, and if I am to fight in their memory, then I should remember him too. Sasuke said. For a moment Kakashi felt his heart swell at that. He always went to the memorial stone, so that Obito's memory would never be forgotten as long as he lived. But now for the first time in a long time a member of his clan would know of him, and remember him as well. What had been done to him was an injustice, and this was a small way to ensure that Obito's memory lived on back in the clan. Sure thing, I have lots of stories about the most unique Uchiha that most likely ever lived. Kakashi smiled before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Chapter 31, Getting Stronger. It was after the day off and Team 7 was back at their training grounds. The team looked better after a day to unwind. Sakura had spent the entire day with Ino, and it was good to just hang out with her best friend, and her reaction to the fact that she saw Naruto's real face was still funny. Sasuke seemed to be not so distant and Naruto seemed to be back to his older self as well. Of course, they were now waiting for Kakashi to show up as usual. "Naruto, do you have any idea where Sensei is?" Sakura asked as they waited. "As if I'd know, all I know is that he said he needed to get something for us and get a little help for the next step in training, whatever that means." He shrugged. So, they went back to waiting around for Kakashi to show up, wondering how late he would be today. Thankfully it seemed that he was only an hour late today when he suddenly showed up in a puff of smoke. "They here, sorry I'm late but I had to pick something up and get someone's help for today," he said from his place on a branch overhead. "Lair!" Naruto and Sakura yelled at him. "No, it's the truth," he said as it was for once. He jumped down and pulled out a box. "Now all we have to do is wait for who I asked to help with your training." "Help with our training?" Sasuke asked him, wondering where the man was going with this. Kakashi nodded. "Yes, the last mission made me think that you all need a bit more training. So I thought of something special on the way back. We're going to start with weapons training and elemental jutsu training for the next week." "Alright, this sounds awesome," Naruto yelled out. "So, who did you ask for help, Dad? Anyone we know?" Kakashi chuckled. "Oh, you can say that. So, when is this person going to get here?" Sasuke asked with his arms crossed. The last thing this team needed was someone else that was comically late. However, he was still thinking about his talk earlier with Kakashi. He had been thinking about this Obito Uchiha, and what kind of person he had been like to give up one of his eyes, even on death. Such a thing was unheard of, as like with the Hyugas his clan guarded their eyes fiercely. He looked at his team as they were talking. Naruto was trying to guess at who it was that was coming and Kakashi kept smiling behind his mask. Sakura was there silently wondering what was going on as well. He thought if he was in Obito's position, would he sacrifice himself for any of them? It would mean that his goal to avenge his clan would end if he did. He was also thought if he was dying if he could trust any of them with his eyes like that man had. It still was just surreal to think of an Uchiha capable of that. "Hey there." Sasuke looked up in time to see a woman in a trench coat, ninja chainmail shirt, miniskirt, who also had purple hair tied up top of her head. She landed with a bundle under her arm close to the team. "Auntie Anko!" Naruto yelled out happily. "Hey there, brat, how's it going?" Anko smiled at him. Sasuke raised an eyebrow at this. He never knew there was an aunt in the family, but then why didn't she wear a mask too? Was it only the men that wore that? He looked around and saw Sakura looking slightly nervous, and then he remembered that she had been closer to Naruto for years. It was obvious that she knew the woman. As she was talking with Naruto, he moved closer to the pink-haired girl. "Sakura, you know this woman?" Sakura jumped at being addressed by Sasuke, but she smiled at him, blushing slightly. Yeah, that's Anko. I met her at Naruto's birthday parties." "She's his aunt." "Well, not really." Sakura went in to explain how Anko wasn't actually a relative of the Hitaki family, she was a good friend of the family. Naruto just liked to give adults certain titles. The Hokage was the old man, Anko was his aunt, and Guy was his uncle. Sasuke went to ask who Guy was, but she told him quickly that he didn't want to know. Sakura had good reason to be nervous around the woman. She was creepy. She had this smile that put you on edge, and the fact the first time she showed up at the first birthday party she and the rest had gone to had been a day she never forgot. They had all been there as it was the first time they had celebrated Naruto's birthday. The house was pretty large for just the two of them. The yard had been huge, so the party was held out there. It had been pretty fun. Of course she hadn't expected several grown-ups to show up. The Hokage stopping by was a surprise. then there was Guy who came out of nowhere. Asuma also showed up for a bit too. But then that was when Anko showed up onto the scene. She had been talking with Naruto when a kunai came out of nowhere and actually sliced his cheek a bit. She had screamed and fell back and Naruto jumped as well, a hand going to his face. And there smiling was Anko. "You're getting slow, brat, you used to be able to dodge those better," she said. Naruto jumped at her yelling, and it kind of devolved into the point where insults were flying, and she ended up putting him into a headlock. But then after that they were both acting like nothing happened, all the while she had been too scared to move and every other kid just stood there frozen in shock. The adults were used to it though, and Hinata seemed to take it better, although she had been worried about the small cut on his cheek. Thinking back to the present, she was now worried what kind of help Anko was going to give them. "So Kakashi, you better make this worth my while," Anko said, facing the masked Jonin. "I'm taking time off my schedule for this, and that weaponsmith was on the other side of the village too." "Alright, fair enough, Dango is on me then," he smiled at her. Anko thought about it, that sure would be nice, but she had been thinking about Kakashi a lot more than usual lately. Ever since she saw that damn face of his, she found the image of his face showing up at the oddest times. Okay, so he was physically attractive, had a major career, and was a single father who did his best to raise his adopted kid. Hell, to most women that would be the perfect guy, although he did have his faults. He was so secretive that only after years of knowing him did she know a bit. She knew about him going to the memorial stone almost daily, and that was the real reason he was constantly late. She knew about his parents dying while he was young, the suicide of his father. She knew that behind that mask he had to be hurting a lot, but he never showed it, never bothered people with it. She knew about his reading habits, but in all honesty, she had her own copies of the books too. Hell, some women actually liked them because they had some strong female characters in them, while some romance books the woman was all girly and couldn't do anything herself. Plus, the sex scenes were really hot. But now she had him in an interesting way. He owed her, and maybe now she could finally sort things out with how she felt, and maybe even seeing if she could get past that wall he put up. "Actually, that might be a good idea, Kakashi, for desert," she said, grinning, and noticed his confused look. "The Dango can pay for the trip to the weaponsmith, but for my help training will take more." Kakashi sighed. "Okay, then what do you want?" "Easy, take me out for a decent dinner tonight." Kakashi blinked a few times. "Huh. Nothing fancy, just treat me to dinner and Dango, and we call it even." Kakashi thought it over, and it wasn't a bad idea actually. Plus, he couldn't think of anyone else he wouldn't mind spending time with. She was an interesting woman, and he had to admit she was full of life, although he knew that she put on a face sometimes, but she largely enjoyed life. Besides, he did owe her, and he couldn't remember the last time he just went out. "Alright, it's a fair deal." "Alright then, so which one is my victim for the day?" she asked, looking at the three kids. "Just hold your horses, I have to explain things to them first," Kakashi smiled as he turned to face his team. "Okay, Sakura and Sasuke, you two will start weapons training today. Sasuke, even though you're good with the ninja wire, I think it's time for you to learn how to use something. The academy record said you showed promise with a sword, so I got you one." He motioned to Anko, who walked over and laid down one of the wooden boxes. She opened it and handed a katana to him and handed it to him. Kakashi pulled the blade from the sheath as he showed it to him. "This is a special blade made from a strong metal that you can send chakra through. Now it will take time to learn that, but I think this could be good for you. I'll be teaching you how to wield it," Kakashi said as he put the blade back and handed it to the boy. "Now as for you, Sakura, Anko will be teaching you the weapon I chose for you." Kakashi smiled, seeing the girl get a little pale at the mention of Anko teaching her. Anko pulled out two weapons from the box. They were long pieces of metal that were rounded with a handle near the bottom. "These are tonfas," Kakashi explained to the girl who tested them out. "They can be used to defend and attack in many ways. You can disable or even cripple a person with them, making them very versatile." What he didn't say was that he wanted her to have a non-lethal weapon until she was more ready to kill. she had been the most shook up from her first kill, so he wanted to give her the option of being able to take someone down without killing. At any rate, she still have her kunai and shurikens if she really did need to kill, plus even a tonfa could kill. You could break someone's neck, crack their skull, or just bludgeon them with the weapon. Plus, Naruto did say that she can hit pretty hard, so it was a good weapon for her. "Hey, what about me?" Naruto asked, looking up at him. "I was getting to you, Naruto," Kakashi smiled as he pulled out a small sword. "I had to wait to get this repaired as it was broken for a long time. I just never had a reason to get it fixed until now. Naruto, this is my father's white light chakra saber." Naruto looked wide-eyed at it as he gently took the small sword. "You mean Grandpa Hataki's sword? The one that you once used?" "Yep," Kakashi said to him. "But this is a family heirloom." Naruto wasn't sure if he should even accept it. He wasn't a real Hatake after all, he was only adopted. Kakashi placed a hand on his shoulder. "Who better to give this to other than my own son?" Naruto looked up, feeling so nice that Kakashi told him that, even though they weren't related by blood, they were a real family. He smiled down, looking at the blade used by Tsukumo Hatake, the legendary White Fang. Just holding the blade, Naruto wanted to do proud by his adopted family. He pulled out the sword, and it looked normal enough. "You have to channel your chakra into the blade to get the full effect. It will take some time, but you're not doing weapons practice today," Kakashi told him. "What? How come?" he demanded. "Because even though you're ahead of Sasuke in the way of the sword, but he's been training with those new jutsus. So, it's ninjutsu training for you today," Kakashi told him. "I want you to practice those scrolls I gave you. The wind armor and wind blade will be very useful to you." "Kakashi-sensei?" Sakura asked him. Will I be using more genjutsu instead of ninjutsu?" "Well, it's your strength, but what's your element?" Sakura didn't know. Thankfully, Kakashi had a few slips of chakra paper on him among his supplies. He tested her, and it turned out that she was a water user. Unfortunately, he didn't know any low-powered water styles jutsus, and neither did Anko. Sakura was a little disappointed to hear that, as she knew her chakra levels needed more work. But Kakashi did say he would be looking into more genjutsu and lower-level water-style moves as well. Sakura felt a bit better at that is until a hand slapped down onto her shoulder. She looked up nervously at a grinning Anko and swallowed hard. "Well, Pinky, looks like we get to play," Anko said dangerously. And so, the day went. Kakashi trained Sasuke in the finer uses of a sword while he went to check on Naruto and Sakura to give any helpful hints. Naruto was using his shadow clones, trying to get his chakra just right for the moves. He already had the hand seals down, but the moving and altering your chakra part he knew Naruto would have trouble with. So, he gave helpful hints now and then. He also noticed that at least one clone was training with his father's sword. He should have known that Naruto would still find a way to train with that. He saw Sakura was actually learning well from Anko, although the woman was pushing the young girl very hard. Sakura asked if she could take off the weights that were on her ankles and wrists, but Anko told her that if she even thought about it again, she would get her heavier ones. Sakura didn't mention it again after it. Sasuke did have some talent with the sword, and he could see that he picked the right weapon. He also asked Kakashi more about Obito while they trained, and Kakashi did. It was actually nice being able to talk about his best friend. Sasuke did have to admit after hearing the stories that Obito was nothing like an Uchiha. By the end of the day, all three students were wiped out. Sakura felt like her entire body ached, Sasuke's arms hurt from using the blade for so long, and Naruto was getting close to chakra exhaustion. But all three genin felt like they had made some progress for the day, so Kakashi let them off the hook a few hours early. The kids went off, and he was proud of how well they were doing for the first day. He was thinking about getting them some new weights, as well as this training would help them adjust to them even more. "So Kakashi, you better keep your end of the deal," Anko told him. "Oh, don't worry, I know better than to get on your bad side," he chuckled. After they both went to their homes for a quick shower and a change of clothes. Although it was just a dinner between friends, both felt a little strange by this. They had eaten before, but never alone. Usually Naruto was with them, or they were with their friends as well. So now they were both wondering if they should just dress casual, or at least put a little effort into it. For Kakashi, he just decided to dress down a bit, mainly just pants without the taping at the bottom, and with no chunin jacket either. In fact, he went with a simple dark shirt that matched his mask. For Anko, she was wondering a bit more about her appearance. This was just one step to see if there was anything between the two of them. She didn't want to dress too strongly, but also wanted to give him something to think about. She got rid of all the ninja gear and her trench coat. She kept her hair in its usual way, but went with simple sandals, a skirt and a nice shirt that went with it. The good thing about the shirt was that it had a nice little V-neck line that let her show off some cleavage, but not too much. She decided with only light lipstick for the night, as she picked up a purse she wore when she went out in more civilian clothing without her coat. With that ready, she walked over to Kakashi's. After all, she told him that she would meet him. She was in no mood to wait around for him in case he was late again. She got to the front door and knocked, and when Kakashi showed up, she liked the casual look, although she wished he wouldn't wear the mask again. She mentally sighed seeing him wearing it. "So, you ready to go?" Kakashi asked, giving her a nice smile. "Sure thing," she said as they walked to their destination. They had a little light talk on the way there as he asked her about Sakura's progress. Anko had to admit that Sakura was raw, but the girl had some talent when she actually applied herself. With some proper motivation and training, she was sure that the girl would become a good ninja one day. They decided on a nice little place that was more civilian patronage, mainly because they didn't want to run into anyone from work and starting all kinds of rumors. They both didn't need any more rumors running about them, not that they cared, but it did get a bit annoying at times. Plus, the place sold dango, so Anko was sold on that point alone. Dinner turned out to be very nice for them. Anko was still annoyed that he somehow managed to eat and drink without taking the damn mask off. If she hadn't seen his face that one time, she would have been convinced that he had been born with the damn thing on his skin. At any rate, they would talk about the usual things that ninjas would talk about: new missions they had been on, new ninja supplies and which store offered the best merchandise and what new things were in stock. New information on the ninja world as well, such as who just got into the bingo books and why, and who was now off the books. And there was only one way someone usually got off the books. They even would talk about it in jokes that only ninjas would get as well. And the latest news on their fellow ninjas too. Kakashi wasn't surprised to find that Guy was last seen trying to climb the Hokage mountain with a boulder on his back with both arms tied behind his back. Apparently, he made it halfway up before he crash landed. He was expected to get out of the hospital in a week. After dinner, Anko decided to have her dango to go as she ate it happily as they walked out. Kakashi had to chuckle at how childlike she was when she was happily eating the snack food. It really took the edges off her personality, and he felt that he was getting a small look at a side of her that she didn't let out often. "Hey Kakashi, you want some tea?" Anko asked as she finished off her last stick. "We're close to my apartment, and I could use some after that meal. Kakashi thought about it, and it did sound nice, plus he knew it wasn't going to lead up to anything. He had a couple of dates in the past that used the "you want to come up for some tea" line, but Anko didn't put any hidden meaning behind the wording. Plus, he had never seen her place before, so he was interested in what her place looked like. They walked up to an ordinary apartment complex, nothing major as you see them around the village all over the place. It helped to save space to build apartments rather than housing, because the more the village grew you ran into a problem with the walls surrounding the village. You would have to expand the walls, and that wouldn't be an easy feat and very expensive as well. So, they walked up to the 5th floor as she put her key into the lock, and they walked inside. Kakashi looked around as she went to the kitchen to make the tea. It was a fairly neat and tidy place. He hadn't been sure what to expect, but it was a fairly ordinary place. It was lived in, but something was odd about it. He looked and realized it was actually kind of plain. There were a few decorations here and there, but nothing that really stood out like she decorated to just fill in space. Although he guessed she filled those spaces with things she liked. He noticed a painting in black and white of a lone tree in a valley. It was kind of lonely looking to him. A few other things here or there, but he noticed that one shelf held a lot of pictures. He smiled as he looked at one with a younger Anko and Kurenai smiling with Chunin vests on. It was most likely taken just as they were both made Chunin together. There was one of her with Naruto and himself at one of Naruto's birthdays. A few others of the few friends as well were there, but there was one that caught his eye. He gently picked it up, seeing a very young Anko with two older people. From the looks of it he had a guess they were her parents. Anko came back with some tea and saw him looking at her pictures, and when she got closer, she saw the one he held. She silently looked on, not sure what to say. It wasn't easy talking about her parents. Thankfully she didn't have to, as he suddenly spoke up without looking at her. It's hard living with this kind of burden, isn't it? What? She asked. Living on after those we loved have gone. He said as he gently put the photo back, still looking at it. I was young too when I lost my parents. I can barely remember my mother anymore, other than from pictures, and I find myself struggling to even remember her voice. Anko now knew what he was talking about, and she felt it too. Having to move one with her parents gone hurt every day. Sure, it didn't hurt as much as it did, but there was a hole in her life that she would never get back. And now she remembered that Kakashi most likely had that same hole as well. I was so young when they died, Anko said silently. I remember them hugging me and telling me they would be back from their mission soon. I waited and waited, but they never came back. I would stay up all night waiting for them. When they didn't come back on time, then I heard they had been killed on the mission. I was devastated. I was filled with so much pain and anger. I thought nothing would be okay again, and then. She trailed off, remembering what happened next. Kakashi was interested in knowing, ever after all these years he still didn't know much about her. But then again they were both secretive people. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, making her look up into his eye. You don't have to go on if you don't want to. I know how painful the past is. Anko nodded, but instead she felt like she had to get this out. Only Kurenai knew about this, and that took a long time to trust her with this. But she felt that she could trust him. After all this time, maybe it was time to start opening up a bit. Besides, he was just as screwed up from a painful past as she was, so maybe he could relate. That was when Orochimaru found me, she stated, and Kakashi nodded his head. He became my teacher, my mentor, and well, he helped me. Or at least I thought he was helping me, but I was nothing but a tool for him. He told me all the right things and made me trust him, then he puts this damn cursed seal on me and leaves me behind. He took my memories as well. Do you know what that's like? I feel like I was violated in a way that I didn't know existed. That bastard ruined my life for a second time. Anko clenched her fists in anger, feeling all the old pain rising up. Then she felt Kakashi gently holding onto her shoulders, and she was brought out of it. She looked into his eye and she didn't see pity or sorrow. She saw a deep understanding in that single eye of his. No matter what happened, Anko, just remembered that you endured. You rose up from the wreckage to become even stronger than you were before. It's not an easy thing to do, and you should be proud of that. I know what it's like to have been left behind to pick up the pieces. It's never easy, but I learned something. He said to her. My life hit rock bottom the night of the Fox's attack, and I lost the last precious person in my life. I had nothing, and yet that was the night I took in Naruto. Because I knew what it was like to have nothing, and I didn't want that for him. But the funny thing is that even though I took him in to help him, he helped me as well. He gave me a reason to get up in the morning and something worth living for. I learned that you don't have to go through it alone. Anko smiled a little. I did have Kurenai to help me out when we became friends. And later the other few friends I made too. Kakashi smiled back at her. Yeah, and well, you know me and Naruto will be there too. Anko felt a warmth in her chest that he would be there for her, she hadn't felt a feeling like that in so long. She wasn't sure what it was, but it felt nice to her. Thanks, Kakashi, and well, the same goes for me too. Kakashi nodded his head. He wasn't sure why, but he felt glad about that. So, what about that tea? Anko just laughed at that moment. It figures that he would break up a moment like this with something like that. But she was glad for it as they went to get their tea together, as they went into more light-hearted conversations. Chapter 32, Rematch with Lee. It had been a couple of weeks, and from the new training and D-rank missions things were going well for Team 7. Although the new training on top of any old training was going well, they all felt like they were getting much stronger now as well. They were even increasing how heavy the weights were at the moment. Sakura still had the lightest set, but she was starting to catch up a bit more all the time. Right now, they had just finished another mission, mainly walking some ladies' dogs. Although after the last big mission the team was glad to relax a bit, they were starting to feel like they needed a bit more of a challenge. At the moment they were just hanging out in a small alley wondering what to do next. Of course, now all the genins had weapon holsters. Naruto's was on his back, while Sasuke's was behind his lower back. Sakura had used the holders for her tonfas behind her back, as well as it was the easiest place to keep them. Oh man, I'm so bored, Naruto whined. Why couldn't we have trained or done more missions? Plus teams 8 and 10 are busy with their own missions. This just sucks. Well, why didn't Kakashi-sensei wanted to continue with training Naruto? Sakura asked him, feeling just as bored. Although the training she was getting made her feel stronger, the fact that Anko was helping her with the weapons was something that she looked forward to and dreaded. The woman was good, there was no question about that, but the woman also was scary. I don't know, Naruto shrugged. Maybe his dad just needed some time, but the only thing he said was that there was someone he needed to see and just disappeared. This is pointless, Sasuke said, pushing himself off the wall. We should train or something, if not then I can go home and work on my fire jutsus. Naruto felt like he needed to train too, but he felt like he needed something different. They had been training together for 2 weeks now, and it was kind of getting predictable. Maybe something new and unexpected was in order. The only problem was that who would be up for some training/sparring? The others in their age group were all busy, and it wasn't like any of the adults could spare anything. Then it hit Naruto just who might be up for just that. If there was one teacher and student that would be up for something, they would be. Oh hey, I know just who to train with, Naruto said excitedly. I think they might still be in the village too, and I know where they train. Naruto slowed down. Sakura yelled at him, who are you talking about? Oh right, sorry. Naruto scratched the back of his head, slightly embarrassed. Well, you know Hinata-chan's cousin? Sakura nodded. She and the others had met the boy at Naruto's sometimes. He was kind of cold, although Ino loved the boy's hair, and was even a bit jealous of it as well. She remembered how the cool Hyuga boy had been surprised when Ino ran up to him begging for his secrets of his hair care. Yeah, well, Neji's team is a year ahead of us, and he's been trained by Uncle Guy. Trust me, he'd love to have his team go up against ours just because he's my dad's rival. There was another reason, and that was because Naruto wanted another sparring match against Lee. With his new moves and skills, he was now ready to take on the older boy. Sasuke gave a small grunt. What's so special about this group besides that you know them? Sasuke didn't really see anything important about this team. Besides, how could they challenge them? Although he wouldn't admit it out loud, they were most likely the best team in their class. Sakura was proving to be better than he had originally thought, and liked that she took her training seriously. Although he wished she would stop acting like a fangirl whenever he gave her attention, it was seriously annoying. Plus, Naruto had always been someone he had to push himself to stay ahead of as well. Naruto knew what would sell Sasuke as a grin slowly spread behind his mask. Oh, they just have the Neji Hyuga, who was last year's Rookie of the Year, and is said to be a Hyuga prodigy. But I guess that's not going to interest you in the least. After all, just because the guy might be even better than you dash. What did you say? Sasuke said coldly. What? He's a year older, and after all the Hyuga are the most powerful clan now. Sasuke grounded his teeth at that last comment. The only reason the Hyuga were so powerful was because Itachi killed off his clan. Plus, he had to admit his ego was telling him that there was no way some Hyuga boy could be better than he was. Perhaps if Naruto wanted to train with this team, he could also prove just who was the real prodigy in this village as well. Naruto smirked seeing Sasuke thinking about it. He knew that he would never be able to pass up the chance to go at it with Neji if he found out about him. Plus, that whole Hyuga/Uchiha rivalry was a surefire way to get him to go. It was just like with his dad and Guy. If you knew what buttons to push, then all you had to do was sit back and let nature take its course. After years of doing it with those two adults, doing this to Sasuke was just so much simpler. So, Naruto grinned at him. What do you say? Wanna go and see for yourself how the great Hyuga fights? If he feels honored, he might let you watch. Sasuke glared at Naruto, and the masked boy knew he had him there. Just shut up and lead the way, Sasuke snapped. So, the young team were on their way to meet up with Team Guy, and Naruto couldn't wait. Plus, while walking, he gave them a few heads up. They were kind of confused on why they weren't supposed to look directly at the green, whatever that meant. And also, when he yelled out to turn away to do so if they didn't want more mental scarring over something that Naruto just kept saying was the most sickening and scary genjutsu in the world. He didn't elaborate, he only shivered as he thought about it. Sakura was wondering what type of genjutsu could have that kind of effect. Well, whatever it was, she wanted to see what the big deal is, and maybe she could learn a new one out of this. Team Guy Training Grounds. Neji sighed as he was waiting with TenTen for Lee and Guy to get through another round of them yelling each other's name, and hoping he didn't do the whole slow motion, running into the sunset thing. Although he and TenTen had long ago figured out how to tune them out when they got like this, they had to pay attention, or get accidentally caught seeing that horrible display of theirs. He sighed in annoyance, wondering how long this would take. He was getting bored. He cast a look to see TenTen just as bored, but then again, the girl was already ready for action. She was twirling a kunai around on the ring with a finger, not even looking at it. Most would be nervous about that, but he knew that her skills were better than most ninja with weapons. In fact, they were amazing. Every weapon she picked up, it was like she had been training with it for years, a true gift. Plus, unlike most young kunoichi, she was actually focused on her skills and training. It was nice to have that for a change instead of the fangirls from his days at school. Like with the Uchiha, he too had to have dealt with that for pretty much the same reasons he did. Neji couldn't stand that kind of false worship and praise. So when TenTen was on the team, he sighed a breath of release. He hadn't been sure of Lee since he was only able to pass the exam, because he was handicapped, so he had to take a special test. He passed at the bottom because of his inability to use ninjutsu or genjutsu, but the boy's determination was making up for it. He never admitted it, but Lee was getting close to his own skills. Even with his handicap, Lee was proving a true challenge. How much longer? TenTen whined. Don't know, they're very enthusiastic this morning. Neji sighed, thinking that the two should switch to decoff if they got like this. It was then that his ears picked up on something coming up on them. He silently activated his eyes and focused on the sound. He was surprised by what he saw, and he gave a slow sadistic smile on his face. TenTen, pervert at 4 o'clock. Angle it at 20 degrees. He grinned, seeing her eyes widen, and then get very furious. If there was one thing, he found out, it was that TenTen hated perverts. He wasn't sure why, but apparently it had something to do with an incident where she had been at the woman's hot spring with her mother once. Then some kind of large white-haired pervert had been caught peeping on them. TenTen never got a good look at the pervert as he was quickly chased off by the angry women, but she had never been so embarrassed or humiliated in her life. TenTen hefted the kunai a couple of times, and then quickly turned and threw it. Hey! A familiar voice yelled out as Naruto came out of the forest holding her kunai. What the hell? Are you two trying to kill me? TenTen's eyes widened at that as she ran over, trying to apologize. Neji! Why did you tell me that there was a pervert in the forest? She yelled at him. What, he isn't? I remember you calling him that a few times while trying to kill him, Neji said as if it was nothing new. TenTen blushed. Remember how she had gone after Naruto after he showed off that forbidden jutsu in front of them. She had forgiven him of course, but she did warn him if she ever saw him use that move, she would kick his ass again. Naruto hadn't thought that Neji hated him for something like this. Maybe he was starting to rub off on the older boy. Well, one good turn deserves another in his mind. He gently gave TenTen back her kunai and his hands rested on hers a little longer than normal. Well, it's okay, I know that TenTen-chan wouldn't hurt me for real. Besides, she's one of best female ninja around and her skills with weapons are amazing. Plus, she's one of the cutest girls too. With that he gave her a wink, making the slightly older girl blush a bit before pulling her hand back. This had several effects as Team 7 had come out in time to see this. First was Sasuke raising an eyebrow wondering what the hell was going on. Sakura instantly became jealous of how Naruto was flirting with this girl, an older girl at that. But the effect that it had on Neji was just the reaction he was hoping for. Neji's hands clenched so hard he could see them going white, and the look in his eyes showed that he wanted to kill the masked boy. Naruto knew that Neji had a crush on the girl and this was perfect evidence for it. Sure, TenTen was cute, but he had other things in mind for a possible girlfriend. Although he did like using those lines he got from his dad on how to compliment a girl. She looked so cute blushing like that. Anyway, if this didn't get Neji off his butt and do something, then someone else would ask out TenTen, and then he'd be out of luck. Naruto-kun, came the voice of Guy as he walked up to them smiling. I'm glad for a visit from you, my most youthful friend, and I see you brought the rest of the team of my eternal rival as well. Naruto, Lee said, jumped over to the other boy. I'm glad you came. I am eager for a rematch, and I will not lose again to you as I've found a way around that move. Lee gave a slight shudder from it. Although it was most unyouthfully move, it had been very effective. Plus, he tried not to think on the image of that beautiful girl either. But then his eyes drifted over, and they widened. Before Naruto could say a word, Lee had just moved quickly to be in front of Sakura. He knelt down in front of her, taking one of her hands. And this must be Sakura, Lee said with stars in his eyes. You are just as beautiful as Naruto has claimed. No, you are even more beautiful than that. Please go out with me. I will protect you with my life. Sakura was shocked by all of this. He was coming on pretty strong for her. He might have been cute if it wasn't for the hideous green suit he was wearing, and she couldn't stop staring at those huge eyebrows. They looked like caterpillars on his face or something. She knew that she had to do something. She didn't want to break his heart or anything. After all, Naruto was always nice to people, even letting them down. She remembered how he let down several of the fan girls back at school, and that was one of the reasons the girls liked him. Unlike Sasuke, who had just ignored them, at least Naruto had been nice about it. It was just one of the things that kind of rubbed off her over the years being friends with Naruto. She quickly looked around and he was too far away, but Sasuke was right next to her. She quickly grabbed his arm in hers. Sorry, but I'm dating someone already. Lee's mouth hung open, as did Naruto. When did that happen? Naruto thought about seeing his crush locking arms with Sasuke. He knew that Sakura was a bit confused on who she liked more, but when did she choose Sasuke? He felt a little depressed at losing to him in this, and although he just wanted Sakura to be happy, he had wished she had chosen him instead. Sasuke wasn't sure what she was playing on, but when he was about to object, he felt her nails suddenly dig into his skin. He stopped himself from yelling and gave her a glare. She quickly leaned in and whispered something to him. Please just go with it. I don't want him to think he has a chance. I'll owe you one and you just have to name it Sasuke-kun. She quietly said. He thought about it. Normally he wouldn't even think about it, but she was a teammate and lately he had been thinking on what that meant. All those stories that Kakashi told him of Obito, who by now Sasuke was sure that Obito was the most original Uchiha of all time, he had been thinking about what his team meant to him. Now Sakura was asking for help, although posing as her boyfriend wasn't something he would have liked to have done. She did say anything. He would have to think about it, as he would ensure that he got something really good back in return. Yeah, we're dating. He simply said as Lee hung in head in depression. Ah, the power of youth is in you too, and fear not Lee, there will be other opportunities for you to share your own youth with some lucky girl. Guy proclaimed, making Lee perk up a bit at that. Then he turned to Naruto, who was glad he had on a mask at that point so no one could see his face. So Naruto, why have you visited us this fine day? Naruto was brought out of his slight depression at the reason they were even there. Oh yeah, well it was just that we were kind of bored and we were hoping that we could spar against your team. I know that I want to show off some new moves against Lee here. And don't worry, I won't use the jutsu against you. He quickly cast a nervous look to TenTen before looking back. Guy-sensei, please let us spar together. I do wish to test myself against Naruto again, and I want to see how well we both have improved. Lee pleaded with Guy. Guy thought about it, and it wasn't a bad idea actually. It would help both teams improve and also could help them to become stronger for it. So it was agreed that the teams would pair off for the sparring matches. Sakura against TenTen, Sasuke against Neji and Naruto, and Lee were eager to go at it. Guy would oversee everything and his word was final. When he said to stop, they were to stop. So with a raised hand he looked at all three ready to go, and then he dropped his hand. The three sparring matches started off right away. Sakura and TenTen were sizing each other up. Sakura pulled out her tonfas ready to give the girl a fight. TenTen smirked and from a scroll pulled out a set of her own. The older girl twirled them around with more confidence and speed than Sakura knew she had ever done. I hope you don't mind, I never get to use these much, and I'd love to spar against someone who is training to use them. When most ninja just use kunai and shurikens, things get so boring. It's nice to meet another ninja that likes to fight with something more unique. TenTen smiled as she got ready. Sakura struck out with her tonfa and wasn't surprised the girl was able to block and counter-attack. Before the match, Naruto gave her a warning that TenTen was a master of weapons, it was her specialty. This made Sakura realize that she had no chance against a weapons master, but she wanted to improve herself, and Anko always said to fight those stronger than you to improve. So she fought back as both girls fought with the weapons. The clacking they made as the weapons hit was nearly a constant beat. Both girls twirling them, throwing out strikes and trying to go for any grapple moves with the weapons. TenTen was scoring more hits and was a bit disappointed, she had been hoping for more. Sakura knew that she wasn't fast enough and jumped away to give her some space. Giving up already? TenTen asked. No, I just need to take these off. And with that, Sakura hit a simple latch on the new weights that let them drop off easily. First her wrists and then the ones at her ankles. Now Sakura felt a lot more mobile, now she felt better. She came back at TenTen with a lot more speed and aggression now, and the older girl was surprised. The blows were a lot harder now, and she was surprised the younger girl had that kind of power to her hits. The battle only intensified as the girls were moving all over the place trading blows. Although TenTen did get in the most shots, it wasn't as many now, and Sakura's blows were getting better too. TenTen wasn't sure who taught the young girl to fight, but it was a vicious style. There was some agility to it, but the strikes were to do maximum damage with little effort. She would have to ask who taught her by the end of this. With Neji and Sasuke, the two boys were already in a staring match. Neither one wanted to be the one to make the first move until they felt they had an opening. Each of them was child prodigies of their clan, and their own clans had been rivals ever since the day the Hyuga came to Konoha. As the only two clans with powerful bloodlines, of course rivalries would spring up, and of course many debated which was better, the Sharingan or the Byakugan. You will learn that there is reason that the Hyuga clan is the strongest in the village, Neji said to the dark-haired boy. Talk is cheap, and I'll show you just why my clan was so feared and respected, Sasuke said back and started his charge. Neji and Sasuke started off with taijutsu skills, Sasuke's intercepting fist styles against the gentle fist style of the Hyuga clan. Neji stayed where he was defending or deflecting the blows, while Sasuke's movements were more pronounced. The Hyuga style didn't have many kicks as it relied mostly on the hands and arms. The intercepting fist was a bit more open than that and allowed Sasuke more types of attacks. He jumped up for a kick and wasn't surprised the other boy blocked it, but Sasuke spun, and the heel of his foot made an arc in the air, sweeping downward into a modified axe kick to Neji's head. But Neji saw this coming and threw his other forearm forward to block the downward kick. Both boys moved back after the attack, and after a second of studying, the other went back at it again. Neji was striking out with lightning speeds with his fist, trying to hit the Uchiha boy. Sasuke just focused on dodging the blows, and it was working as Neji was getting a little frustrated. Sasuke smirked at the boy. "Your eyes are said to see everything, but that's not true. There is one thing that they can't see." "And what is that?" Neji asked as they didn't stop the fighting. "They can't see the future, and with my eyes I can see every move you make before you do it," Sasuke smirked. With his eyes he could see the subtle movements in his body telling him what his opponent was thinking of doing. He could see where the chakra was going into his body, and it was like the other boy was moving slower. But Kakashi had explained that it was how his brain was interpreting the new information of his eyes. They were moving at the same speed, only his perception of it was different. His mind was actually moving slightly faster than normal. So with this he could see where Neji wanted to strike, and he made sure he wasn't anywhere in that area. The only problem for him, though, was that he couldn't get past the boy's defense. Neji's eyes would see in a 360-degree arcade, meaning that there was no angle that he could get through. There had to be a way through the defense, but Sasuke couldn't see it. There was another problem, and that was he had to be careful of his attacks. Any attack that he put in, he had to be careful that Neji couldn't hit him back with his hands, because he would shut them down by attacking his chakra pathways. So if taijutsu was out, there was the other ways of fighting. He jumped back, throwing several kunai. Neji was surprised by the sudden change in tactics, but took out 2 kunai of his own and easily blocked them. After all the practice with TenTen, it would take a lot more than that to get through his defense. Sasuke yelled out as he charged with his sword in hand. Now, it would give him the reach while kept Neji away at a distance. Neji jumped back. He had seen the sword, but hadn't thought the boy would be forced to bring it out, but it did make Neji smirk as he had forced him to use it. Although with the sword Sasuke knew he couldn't use any hand seals for jutsus, but with this he was keeping the Hyuga boy on his toes, as all he had was kunai to block the blows of his sword. Although he was reluctant to admit it, the Hyuga was good. Neji was now seeing firsthand why the Uchiha clan had gained its reputation, but he refused to give up fighting. Lee and Naruto were after each other as soon as Guy told them to start. Neither one was wasting any time, already charging against each other. Both of them started off with just taijutsu like Sasuke and Neji had. Both boys were fast and furious, as their styles were designed to be that way. For Lee, his strong fist style was used to create a lot of external damage to his opponent. Naruto's style was something more original, as he had been working on it all his life. It was a mesh of several styles, things he learned from his dad, Anko, and even Guy. It was powerful moves, but it was also unpredictable. As for Naruto, he kept making things up on the fly all the time. Speed and maneuverability were key to it, as it made him hard to hit while on defense, but when he switched to offense he had little in the way of defending. It was complex, but for Naruto it just fit him. He had yet to give it a name, as he wanted something really cool for it. Now both boys were eagerly going at it, trading blows with reckless abandon, but both loving it. Naruto knew that he was no match for Lee with just limiting himself to taijutsu, but he wanted to see how far he had come against someone like him. But Lee was just too fast, and what bothered Naruto was that he knew the green-clothed boy had on weights on his legs that were much heavier than his. "Yash, Naruto-kun, your abilities have gotten a lot better," Lee proclaimed. "Yeah, but I'm still not a match for you," Naruto said back. "Then please don't hold back, I want you at your best," Lee told him. "Okay, it's your funeral," her smirked, making over a dozen shadow clones. They all charged Lee, but he simply destroyed them one at a time. As Lee was doing this, Naruto was thinking of his next move, and called up one of his special shadow clones. This single clone jumped out in front of Lee and just stopped. Lee was a little confused at the clone as it winked at him, and then suddenly exploded. The force was enough to send up dirt everywhere, blinding the boy for the moment. Then he felt a kick to his front as Naruto had used the distraction to get in a flying kick on Lee. That was a most excellent move, Naruto-kun, but I will not fall for it a second time, Lee said, charging Naruto again. Naruto went into a set of hand seals before crying out his next jutsu, wind style, air armor. There was a green molding of air around his body. Lee's fist came flying and Naruto tried to dodge it. Lee had thought he would get a glancing blow until he felt that there was wind around Naruto. It seemed to deflect his fist even more, and he saw the bandages on his arms starting to rip up. He jumped back, avoiding a kick by Naruto. Naruto smirked under his mask. Like it? I just learned it. It's called air armor and it covers my body with wind. It's supposed to shred anything that comes in contact with it, but I'm still working on it. For now, unless you hit me directly, you'll just slide off and you'll get damaged because of it. Naruto was proud that he had managed to get some headway in the jutsu, although it was far from perfect. He was more ahead with the air blade, but he didn't want to end up killing Lee by accident. His dad forbade him from using it in sparring until he had more control. But this would help even things out, as Lee would be forced to aim for more direct hits, and by the smiling form of Lee, he was all up for the challenge. Guy was proud of how well the Genins were doing. He had been thinking that now was the time for them to take the Chunin exams, but seeing them against Kakashi's team, it was obvious that his team was quickly catching up and would be ready for the Chunin exams themselves at this rate. He smiled at the thought of his team and his rival's team both competing in the exams. If this was any indication, Kakashi's team would be a tough one to beat this year. Both teams had a similar setup as he watched them. There were the two prodigies, two very determined kunoichi, and two boys who were geniuses of hard work. The girls were running out of energy first, it seemed. TenTen didn't have the chakra or stamina that Neji or Lee had. The two geniuses were refusing to give the other any slack. It was almost a grudge match, and he was a bit worried because of how intense it was getting. Lee and Naruto were having fun with the spar, although both looked a little worse for wear, as they were both the type to charge in first no matter what kind of damage they gained. After 15 minutes, both TenTen and Sakura had stopped panting and sweating, and so Guy called their match to an end. Both girls nodded to each other, a little respect showing as they went to get something to drink. But the boys kept on fighting, and when 30 minutes had come and gone, Guy felt they were getting pretty close to ending things. He decided that they had enough and raised an arm. "That's enough, the rest of you stop," Guy bellowed out. The four stopped, but they didn't look happy at it. "Oh come on, we're just getting started, right Lee?" Naruto asked his partner. "Yes Guy-sensei, please let us continue," Lee asked. Neji and Sasuke, although looked nearly exhausted, were still giving each other determined looks. Neither of them wanted to back down either, as there was still no clear winner. Guy shook his head. "I think you all have done enough. In fact, I'm proud of my rival's team to have lasted as long as they could against a more seasoned team. This means that we'll have to increase our training to become even stronger when you next meet." "Yes Guy-sensei," Lee said with tears running down his face. "Oh god no," Naruto muttered, quickly turning away. Sakura and Sasuke were wondering why when they noticed Neji and TenTen quickly doing the same thing. Then that's when it started, first with Lee and Guy calling out to each other over, and then they started running towards the other. It was then that suddenly a sunset came out of nowhere and the two were at a beach of all things. They ran into each other hugging as a giant wave crashed against the rocks. Sasuke looked sickened at the image, but unfortunately, he hadn't turned off his Sharingan. The image was burned into his mind for all time, and for years this image would haunt his dreams like it had so many others in the village. Sakura now understood what Naruto meant. She tried to cancel the Genjutsu, but to her horror she couldn't. She tried to figure out how he even made it. If she could copy this, it would be something that could really throw her enemies off. That is, if she could ever get over the image herself. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.